We got Fred Raby, who led our training on Tuesday, and he is back with us to go over all the ins and outs on the Netgear ecosystem, and we'll get into this. Is going to be a little different. We're going to be, I guess, I shouldn't say hands-on because we're not, out there, but it's going to be virtually hands-on, right? So, Fred, thanks for joining us back. Fred does lead product development and training for Netgear. Welcome back. Thanks again for doing this for us. So the next hour, we're going to be covering some pretty detailed stuff as far as Netgear goes. So I appreciate you joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. So for everybody who was not here for Tuesday's webinar, please go check out the recording there if you would like to see more of a high-level overview of what these products are. The bulk of the time today we will be spending on going through the product management interface and showing you how to set these things up. So with that, we'll jump right in. And first we will be looking at our so earlier this week when we were talking, we were separating out the data side of the network from the AV side of the network because fundamentally AV over IP typically uses a higher grade switch, and to put those everywhere in the house doesn't always make sense. So, for supporting the router and the wireless network and any other data points on the network that you need, we'll be talking about those products first. And I just wanted to flash this information up here so that anybody who missed it the other day or can get that refresher. We have a Pro Wi-Fi design team available by email at prowifidesign@netgear.com. They will take a floor plan or a blueprint and they will heat map it for you free of charge. Just make sure you include, how tall the ceilings are, what the walls are made out of, and make sure that we have points of measurement for scale on the drawing so that we make sure it's proportionately correct. Apologize today, my throat is a little trebly, so I should be fine throughout this, but if I suddenly mute, it's just to make sure you don't hear me clearing my throat. So please reach out to them with any plans that you would like to have heat mapped. You can also ask questions about a deployment. I would not necessarily come here initially for troubleshooting, but you can still ask technical questions and make sure you've got the right answers. So please feel free to reach out to the Pro Wi-Fi design team as often as you need. Also, just a quick reminder, we do have access points that are exclusive to our CI channel, and they are there to preserve margin for you and also provide the added benefit of having 4 years of our Insight Pro licensing built in up front so that you don't have any ongoing licensing costs to worry about for a fairly reasonable time for the duration of that deployment. If you need to, you can also get licenses that would lengthen out that 4 years at the time of purchase. And then I'll be showing you where you can go into our Insight platform to make sure that you are handling all of that licensing properly. So with that, we will jump right into our Insight portal and show you around a little bit. Again, this is the cloud portal that we use for monitoring and managing and setting up all of our cloud-enabled devices. This will include routers, Wi-Fi hotspots, like an LTE hotspot, smart switches, and wireless access points. And the portal is laid out in a manner so that when you log in, you are seeing your customer organizations. This is a term used so this product was originally conceived with small to medium business in mind. And at the time, they hadn't thought of the idea or notion that someone may be managing home networks on the same solution. So these organizations can be whatever you call them. In this particular case, this is the portal used by our marketing team. So they have put a bunch of fictitious businesses here. But when you go into that business, you can then see multiple locations. So if you have customers that have multiple places that you are covering, or if you do some commercial work on the side and maybe you cover a restaurant with a few locations, then you can have all of that here. And then when you go into a location, this is where you will manage the individual pieces of equipment. Before we get into that particular part of it, though, I do just want to show some of the other portions of the portal. And again, we are looking at Insight Pro today. There is an Insight Premium, and some of you, if you log in at insight.netgear.com, if you already have a My Netgear account, you may actually see it log in to a premium account. If you would like to upgrade that to a pro account, what you'll do is click on your name in the corner here, come to account management, and on a premium account, you should see a link here that says upgrade to pro account. It'll take everything that you have existing and upgrade it to the pro level. With that pro account, you have the ability to organize your portal in the way that you see it here, where you have that organization view and then locations within those organizations. You'll also see that you are logged in as the pro admin. An admin can create organizations and redeem licensing. And you can also create secondary admins if you would need to. So that way everybody can log into the portal with their own unique login. And then you can also create manager access. And manager access, hold on just a moment here, just going to make sure that's looking at the portal as a whole. Manager access is someone who can log in and manage equipment, but is not an admin. You can control what organizations they see and what they don't see. So any boxes that are unchecked for that manager will not show up. This means you can use this for people that are internal to your organization, or you can also peel off access for individual customers if you ever needed to. Say you help manage a small business that does have someone who's IT savvy enough to go in and fix some problems, maybe make some policy changes, but you're helping them set up and get everything up and running. You can isolate a login just for them. You can also control if they have read-write or read-only access. So this just gives you an additional way of being able to manage who has access and ensuring that everybody is logging in under their own unique login. In addition to that, when we go into the account management section, you'll see on the Pro section, when we come to subscriptions, this is where we can redeem licensing. So with a Pro level account, you can purchase licensing through Next Level, and those come in multi-packs, like you can get a single license, a 10-pack, a 25-pack, 50-pack, 100-pack, and you can get all of those over 1, 3, or 5 years. So you have a little bit more flexibility over the level of licensing that you're applying. And if you have credits that you're splitting across organizations, you can click on that and see a breakdown. So if you have a license coming up that's due, you can see what is associated with that license. And when you redeem those licenses, you can also choose whether they redeem to the account at large so that you can split them up between customers. Or if you would like, you can also assign them to a specific organization. And you can also schedule those out for either immediate release, or you can schedule them out currently up to 2 years in advance, but in the coming months, we will be lengthening that out to 4 years in advance. Which means that if you buy a product that comes with a 4-year license included, but you know that customer would rather wait 5 or 6 years, you can purchase additional licenses at that time and then redeem them out for a delayed release so that you have all of the cost of the solution up front and no ongoing costs. All right, so getting into the management of devices, a feature that I would like to make sure we're looking at here before I jump into it. I did go over this the other day, but just to make sure everybody's able to see this, when you create an organization, you can also create organization-wide SSIDs. This means that regardless of how many locations you create for that customer, when you add wireless access points, it will automatically inherit any policy that you've created for organization-wide SSIDs. So when you come in here to add an SSID, Of course, these are the options that everybody's going to be familiar with. You can give it a name, choose whether it's being broadcast, the bands associated with it, security settings, and which VLAN it's associated with. We'll look a little bit more at the VLANs here in just a moment. For guest networks, you do have client isolation, and you also have the options of band steering, which will dynamically choose which radio the customer should be on, and also fast roaming for those deployments with multiple access points to ensure that as the customer moves around the deployment, they automatically roam to the next best access point. When band steering is turned off, you can still have a network with multiple radios associated with it. And when the customer connects, they will connect to whatever the highest frequency that they also support would be. So if you have devices that are on a 6E network and the client has a 6 gig device, it will join that particular network. If they have only a 5 gig radio, they don't have a 6 gig radio, of course, they'll join that band. And if they only have a 2.4 gig, they will join that band. And if the 5 gig or 6 gig are unavailable, but the 2.4 gig is available, then as long as they are connected to that particular access point until they roam, they'll just stay on that 2.4 gig radio. And again, just a reminder for everybody, we do have the Q&A box. So if there are questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to ask them, even if it's ahead of where you think we might be in the discussion. And I will be happy to answer them kind of as we go. Now, for actually looking at the equipment management, I'm actually going to jump over into another portal because I have a location, a portal that's used by our sales engineers where we have all of the different products that we will want to look at today already in a single location. This portal, like I said, this is used by our sales engineers, and it is used globally. So instead of the organizations being customers that they have set up, they have dictated it by geolocation. So you can be as clever as you want to be with the organization name. It doesn't really matter for us as long as you know what that is and the boxes that you're putting things in. But I'm going to go to our Germany location today and our Munich location. And when you get into a location, this will actually showcase all of the same categories up at the top. And I do apologize. They have their devices offline today because they are in the process of moving their lab. And so they've taken all of their equipment offline. But because everything that we are doing is happening in a cloud GUI, it does not matter that the devices are offline. We can still change the policy associated with them. And then when those devices come back online, they'll inherit any policy changes that we've created during the time they were offline. So of course, if you click on topology view, this is the last layout of everything that was connected. So you can see how all of the Insight devices are connected and laid out. If you have a router on the solution, when you click on router and come down, you will see those routers in that location. In this place, they did add 2 routers. And if you ever add 2 routers, please make sure that they are not behind one another. And if they are, please turn off your DHCP and ensure that you're not creating a double NATing situation or a double DHCP. This was just set up for demo purposes. Basically, anytime a piece of equipment comes out, they add it in. Now, neither of these models are currently available, but we have a router that was announced last week at InfoComm, something that we call the PR460X. This will be available in late August, and so I know Next Level will be very excited to get those on the shelves for you all. This will be a rack-mountable router, and it will feature a 2.5 gig multi-gig WAN port, as well as a 10 gig LAN port that can be defined as a WAN port. And I'm still waiting for the official feedback from UL Testing, but our product line manager did assure me that on the 10 gig connection, he can guarantee at least 5 gigs of WAN to LAN throughput. And he was just waiting for the final testing to come back to see what that upper echelon of of that WAN to LAN throughput would be, how close to that actual 10 gig we would see making it through the firewall. Whenever you see that kind of spec advertised with Netgear, it is a real world application with the firewall enabled, so that we're giving you a true to life WAN to LAN throughput. We're not just going to say it's got a 10 gig port so you can get 10 gigs through the firewall. We want to make sure we're actually giving you a realistic number there. But the options that we see when we go into this device are pretty close to what we will see in Insight when that router is available. So you'll be able to see what ports are being utilized. In addition to the ports I mentioned, you will also have 4 multi-gig LAN ports that are copper, as well as a 10 gig fiber port on the LAN side. And then, of course, if you're not using the 10 gig copper port as WAN 2, you can also software define it to the LAN side of the network. So you'll be able to provide a lot of throughput into the network and through those devices. And of course, you'll be able to see who's connected, modify any DHCP servers associated with it. Our routers have previously supported 4 DHCP servers, and I expect that to be a similar number with the new router. Should that be different, though, we will make sure that is reflected. And don't be surprised if we are back for another training when that router is officially launched. Of course, you'll be able to see WAN information. I haven't heard back yet on what the exact details of VPN and what that will be, but there will also undoubtedly be troubleshooting as well that you can do through that router to do things like an internet speed test or a ping test directly from the router, so that you can quickly establish portions of the network that may be responding better than others. And if you're diagnosing a network problem, you'll be able to test at various points along the network. All right. Now, I did mention that there are mobile hotspots as well. So if you have customers that do want a mobile hotspot that they want you to be able to troubleshoot from anywhere, we have a few devices available. Now, this isn't something that we necessarily expected Next Level to sell a lot of. So if you're asking about devices, just note that we'll get back to them with the proper models that you can look at and make sure that they can support that purchase as well. But any devices purchased will be compatible with GSM SIM cards, like through T-Mobile or AT&T or any other smaller carrier that may use GSM SIM cards. And I apologize if you can hear my daughter in the background. She is informing me that it is raining here in Harker Heights, Texas today. And she is very excited about that. Being compatible with GSM SIM carriers means that they are not compatible with Verizon. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Verizon always has exclusivity clauses built into their contracts with manufacturers. So if you want a device that works with Verizon, we will need to find out if they have Insight supported devices available through the Verizon dealer that you are working with. And unfortunately, I have very little influence there, but we will still make every effort to make sure we've got the right information for you so that you can do as much with that as possible. But the nice part is you will have remote troubleshooting capability, and you will be able to see if those hotspots are up or down. And maybe if that's only handy for you and not so much for your customers, at least you have that available. And then if we keep going just kind of across the board here, wireless is probably my favorite part of Insight, just because it's the most uniform throughout everything that you do. Basically, every access point that you add to this location just puts it into Insight acting as the controller, and all of the policy that you make is just automatically pushed out to every access point that you bring online to that location. So if we look here, and this is also a reason I really like this portal, they have almost every different type of access point on here. The 608Y is actually new. That's the outdoor access point exclusive to the CI market. But you'll notice that they don't have the 618, 628, or 638E, and that is because they don't do as many demos yet for the CI market over in Germany. So they're not adding equipment that fundamentally their other people won't be able to use. But you can put these access points in any combination with each other, and they will provide a seamless roaming experience between all of them. So feel free to add whatever you'd like, and they will all work together as long as they start out with WAX6. That's very important. That WAX 600 series denotes that they are Insight manageable and Wi-Fi 6. We will see a name change when Wi-Fi 7 access points are released. I don't have an exact date on that, but I can tell you they will be within the next year, and they will be 10 gig ready because that's how fast Wi-Fi 7 is going to operate. So, but feel free to put them in any combination. Also, Next Level does have the ability to source any of the other access points that we see available through our traditional IT segment, but just be aware that because they are not exclusive to the CI market, they may have to be a little more competitive, which means there's probably less chance for you to make margin. And so I do recommend looking at those CI exclusives primarily, just because those are the ones that are going to preserve that margin for you. And we want you making money more than we want you just buying access points. Because if you're not making money with our access points, chances are you're not going to buy them. So we want you making money. That's first and foremost. So to actually manage the wireless networks, what we do is come into settings here. And this is where we create all of our policy. We can see, this is showing me none of these are organization-wide, but if they are organization-wide SSIDs, they will show up here. If we go to create an SSID, it's the same window that we saw just a minute ago with the organization-wide SSIDs. So what I want to do is look at one of the networks that we have here, just so you can see once it is set up what is anything a little bit different. And we'll see here they've chosen to isolate one particular radio, but you could also highlight all three. Of course, your security options that you would expect to see. Now, when it comes to the VLAN, these guys do have multiple VLANs created, and I'll show you where you can go ensure that you are selecting the right VLAN. But if you needed to, you could also add a VLAN here if you did not already have one created for that SSID. But I'll be showing you another place where I recommend adding those all together. Also, they have decided to turn on band steering and turn off fast roaming for this particular SSID. They do like to do a lot of testing. The sales engineer that they have in Germany really is one of those very thorough guys. I don't know if you want to count that as a typical German trait. I guess you can. But he does provide a lot of valuable feedback for us. Also, we have the ability to enable an SSID schedule. Now, the reason I highlight this is because this is commercial grade equipment that is capable of handling up to 8 different SSIDs being broadcast simultaneously. And you can turn on band steering for all 8 if you would like to. Now, just be aware that when these were initially designed, we did limit that to 4 with band steering enabled because it was basically 4 SSIDs per radio. And with a 2 radio system, that's where you would get the 8. And we did cause a software force to be able to allow you to do all 8. Above 4, sometimes it does give a little bit slower performance depending on how they're being used and configured. And so if you have concerns there, that would be a great time to get the details of your deployment over to the Pro Wi-Fi Design team at prowifidesign@netgear.com so that they can help, just kind of go over the configuration with you and what they would recommend for the outcome that you would desire. But with that, what we typically do recommend on an installation is giving an SSID for the customer's devices. And then we do also recommend isolating a different SSID on a different VLAN for all of the IoT devices. This is to ensure a little bit more security for the network. Should some random light bulb chipset that you decided to use be compromised for security through no fault of your own, we would hate to see that entry into the network give somebody the ability to infect a customer's personal device that they might do their banking on, for example. So adding that extra SSID allows you the flexibility of having all of your IoT devices being able to have similar policy, but also being isolated for security purposes from the rest of the devices on the network. With this SSID schedule, we've also seen a really clever solution to people with children still at home, and that is that you can create a third network or a second network if you're not isolating the IoT devices, and you can have that extra network associated to the same VLAN as your customer's devices, but you can create an SSID specifically for the children's devices that then turns off automatically at night. So you're able to automatically handle some of that policy in an automated fashion. If they were to ever say, "Hey, we're having, the kids are having a sleepover tonight. We're letting them stay up all night. Can you just make sure that stays on?" From anywhere in the world, you would be able to log into this website or load up the mobile app on your phone and just simply slide that bar off, save that policy, and that network will stay on until you come back in and re-enable the schedule. So these are things that I like to make sure you're aware of, kind of what we're seeing out in the market, so that if you are not offering some of those options, but your competition is, and you're coming in at a similar price point, I want to make sure that you've got the more intriguing network that's going to reel in that customer. And when you look at the time it takes to set these things up, it literally just takes minutes. So I'll be showing you in just a moment how you can create a whole new VLAN all the way from your router to the access point, and it'll take you less than 5 minutes, far less. Now, another thing that we've also seen is, if we look at this particular location, having 3 different isolated SSIDs, we have seen some people in the work from home climate that exists now. You may have customers who are high-level CEOs of financial institutions or other kind of high-value industries that may want to or need to adhere to particular policies with their work-from-home device. So you could also actually pop up another SSID and isolate it on another VLAN to be able to support those work-from-home devices being completely isolated on the network as well. Again, for security purposes. If they have a teenage son that's out there, looking up materials that maybe they shouldn't and get a virus, the last thing we would want to do is have that banking CEO have a compromised computer for want of an isolated VLAN. Again, these are very easy to set up, and we'll look at that in just a moment. But looking at the other options you have available, you'll be able to see any Wi-Fi schedules here that you have and what they are applied to. So if we come in here, we can see the times that we set them up, so that they're very easy to change and manipulate policy. If you have URLs that you want to filter out, you can do that. These guys are a little bit funny. Again, Germans known for their sense of humor in isolating out competitors' websites. Instant VPN is a way of isolating the configuration for the entire network at large. So if there are particular channels that you do not want to allow, or signal strength that you would like to ensure are set across all of your radios, then you can set that all at the same time. You can come in and ensure that fast roaming is enabled for all networks rather than going SSID by SSID. We do also allow our outdoor access points to be used as air bridge devices. Now, this does change the broadcast of the device itself. It creates between two outdoor access points. It creates a broadcast that cannot be joined as a standard SSID. And so, if you add things to an air bridge group, please reach out to the Pro Wi-Fi design team again to make sure that we've got all of the equipment necessary, because that can make a big difference. Of course, load balancing, if you would like to adjust, say, the clients per radio or the signal strength at which they roam. You can come in here and fine tune those items. Also, if you're having sticky clients, you can choose to disassociate sticky clients. If we come into the management VLAN, you can choose which VLAN is used for the management VLAN of your wireless access points. All Insight devices do maintain their local GUIs, and you can remove them from Insight at any time and still manage them on the local GUI. So think of Insight as a tool that's there for you to use, but not an absolute necessity. If you wanted to, you could remove a customer from Insight and still manage them just fine. Under Advanced, we see a few more settings, and I go into the detail here because I want people to see, what we can do and where you can go do that. So if this feels like we're going a little bit deep, I mean, that's the point. Now in here, you can automatically adjust if there are particular modes that you do not want to have enabled on particular radios. If you have devices that are finicky, so you're setting up a 2.4 gig network that say only goes to wireless N, you can do that. You can make adjustments to, and these make adjustments to all of the access points associated with that location, rather than going device by device. You also see that you do have some options for broadcast to unicast or IGMP snooping, which may be needed for certain wireless AV setups. I haven't run into any particular that I'm aware that require these, but I know they were added by customer request. So if you think these may apply to you, that is an excellent time to reach out to Pro Wi-Fi Design. Also, if you have customers that say, hey, are these green? Do these only use the energy that they need to? You can make sure they are in an energy efficient mode, which becomes a little bit more aggressive at turning down the access point when it's not being used. But as more devices connect to the network or they start going out further from the center of the network, it will ensure that it has the sufficient broadcast to keep those devices connected. Also, all of our access points support multi-PSK, which allows you to have multiple keys that log you into the same network. So where I've seen this used most in the residential space is if you have, say, the cable guy is coming over to troubleshoot the internet connection. You could actually create a pre-shared key for that service technician so that they don't have the standard key to the network and they can't come back and just connect at any time. So that is one possibility for that kind of configuration. Also, if somebody was just having, say, an event and they wanted everybody to be able to connect to the network temporarily, they didn't want an isolated VLAN for that. They just wanted everybody on the network, knowing that they're all going to be together. You can configure multiple keys and turn them on and off as needed. And finally, with mesh settings, this allows you to connect multiple access points via the wireless connectivity instead of the wired backbone. This is supported on any of our Wi-Fi 6 access points. So if you have a dead spot that you're trying to cover, or you can't cable out to a particular location that you need to cover, you can simply plug an access point into the wall and mesh it to the closest wired access point. Now, just be aware that when you do this, you have a route and satellites. The satellites are the wirelessly connected devices. You can have 3 satellites per route, and you cannot connect a satellite to another satellite. So you can't daisy chain that connection out. It leads to incredibly poor performance. And when we've tried to do that, it doesn't work out very well, and so we don't allow it. This also means that you can, something that we've recently tested is using the mesh mode with the outdoor access points. Now, granted, those do not have a power adapter available. All of the indoor access points do. And so if you need a power adapter, just reach out and we will make sure we're getting the appropriate one. There are two different power adapters, one that basically covers everything that needs up to PoE+, and then there's a separate power adapter for those access points that need PoE++. So just be aware that on the outdoor access points, that is not an option. So you do either need to use a PoE switch or a PoE power injector, and then you can use those in a mesh mode that basically makes it an outdoor wireless repeater instead of, in contrast to that AirBridge group that we talked about earlier. That means that if you have two outdoor access points that are set up in the mesh mode, everybody will be able to join the network in that broadcast range as well, and you can extend that out if you have, say, a pool house or another area that you need to cover that is outside of where you can get a cable to. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and want to make sure everybody knows that is an option as well. Mark, just to give it a break there, have we had any questions to address yet?
Well, I had one question about the roaming with the access point. So that it's automatically set up as far as handoffs go. There's no other additional piece, controller, or whatever. Is that built into the router?
That actually is a function of Insight. So no controller is needed. You just plug these into a data line that has internet and connect them up to Insight, and you are all set and ready to go.
And then I guess one question that we discussed a little bit yesterday, the Pro AV design services. If somebody has a question, they're going through the setup here. Is that who they reach out to, or is there another like tech support line? Because this, I guess this could be considered a design, but I mean, it's really, I would think tech support. Who would you want our guys to reach out to if they come across any issues in the setup of Insight?
You can always reach out to prowifidesign@netgear.com, and you'll never be in the wrong. They're kind of a catch-all for anything that you might be looking at. But just be aware that all of the CI exclusive access points also come with 4 years of our 24/7 Pro support included. And that does take you to an escalated support team. That does not get you to the standard tier 1 script readers. So you do always have the option of calling into an escalated support team if you're using the CI exclusives. The standard access points that we just sell through all of our other channels, those come with 1 year of Insight Pro included. And then on the support side, it's 90 days of phone, chat, and email. And then Pro support contracts would need to be purchased after that point. But again, you can always also reach out to Pro Wi-Fi Design. And we have several folks that are looking at that, including myself. So for example, if I saw a time that I could be helpful, then I would jump in as well. And just be aware, for anybody out there listening, I am happy to help you go through and set up your Insight equipment and help you create your account. So if you are getting any of this equipment through Next Level, please just make sure that you are aware. You can always reach out and say, hey, I want to set up some time with Fred and over at Netgear, and I will make sure that we go through and help you set up all of the policy that you're looking to implement on those devices.
Yeah, again, so long as there's options for our guys to get a hold of somebody when they need it and not, have to wait for a phone call back after hours. I mean, when they're implementing these systems, I mean, it's like, they need answers right away. And especially something if some people are watching this and haven't ever set up any, Netgear or not unfamiliar with Insight, there's probably gonna be some hiccups over the, over their implementation of. So I just want to make sure they have somebody to talk to if they need it right away.
Yep. Yeah. So just be aware, as long as you're sticking to those CI exclusives, then you've got 4 years of 24/7 coverage. And that Pro Wi-Fi Design does go globally. So even if it's late at night, you could still email it and expect a response. And there are a lot of folks looking at that. So we do try to get to everything as quickly as possible. And I have had people reach out and say, hey, can someone give me a call? And someone's giving them a call within 5 to 10 minutes. So don't think that email is necessarily a poor way of getting a hold of anybody. And really quick, I just saw I did take a little more time on wireless than I intended. So looking at the wired portion, again, these are relegated to our smart switches. So more handy for the data side of the network. And again, there's the MS510TXUP that is a highly recommended switch for wireless access points because it handles multi-gig and PoE++. So if you're using our WAX638E, that does require PoE++ to fully power that access point. But when we go into a switch, you see pretty much the same thing every time. You'll see a map and diagram of what's connected, and you can go down to the port level. You'll also see off to the side that you can get a topology view, see who's connected. IP settings is for the switch itself if you want to hard set or statically assign the IP address associated with that switch on the network. PoE management is very nice because it allows you to actually power cycle ports based on what's plugged in. So you can select the ports, hit power cycle, and you're doing that without interrupting the traffic flow across the rest of the switch. Of course, in this case, it's letting me know the device is offline. But you can do this while you are, while the customer has other critical things happening on the network, and it will only affect the ports that you are looking at. Now, just like with the wireless, we do have a settings over here that affects all of the devices on the network. And I like to show that off because for things like group port settings, you'll see that you can change all of the devices at the same time. Also, when we get to things like VLANs, this is where I would recommend setting up a lot of your stuff. Because when you have Netgear devices across the entirety of the network, you'll see here we're presented with the basics of configuring the VLAN. And then on the next step, the wired setting allows us to tag all of the physical ports across the router and switches that are associated with Insight on that network. So we can do all of our VLAN tagging from the router all the way out to the access point. Again, if anybody is unfamiliar with this process, I will help you set this up. And never be embarrassed to throw up your hand and say, hey, can Fred just give me kind of a networking 101? He kept talking about VLANs and DHCP. I'd really like to know more about those things. I always say there's no such thing as a stupid question. Only people who don't ask the questions that they think are stupid. Because if you do feel that way, then it's information that you feel is critical that you should know. So please make sure you ask that. And we can happily set up one-on-one sessions, and we can go through any facet of networking that you would want to talk about. But so you can tag all your physical ports there. The wireless settings section allows you to create an SSID associated to that VLAN. And then DHCP server allows you to create the DHCP server on the router for that. And we are seeing all of these options because this location has a router, switches, and access points all added to the location. So those are all showing up. If I didn't have the router, DHCP server and network sharing go away. If I didn't have the access points, number 3, the wireless settings would go away. If I didn't have switches, if I only had access points, wired settings would go away because I wouldn't have anything to tag, but I could still create the VLAN and the wireless network in that scenario. So this is dynamic according to what's on there. Now, looking at one last thing, the last part that we didn't talk about is what is the flow when you are adding products to Insight and you're setting up a customer? Well, the first thing you want to do, very quickly add the organization, and then go into that organization and add the location. And then once you've added the location, if you have any wireless policy that you're setting up, you can actually set all of that ahead of time. So set up all your wireless policy. Now, the routers and switches, you have to add them and bring them online because the policy is not as global for those. But once you have all of your wireless policy set up, you have all the location on there, you can then add devices. You can either come in here to the website and add the serial number, or you can also use the mobile app to scan a QR code or barcode for the serial number to add those devices in. Once they are added in, plug them in. For the access points, plug them in and walk away. Wait about 5 to 10 minutes, and they will be set up and ready to go with the policy that you've created with switches and access, or with switches and routers. Add them, and then when you plug them in, just give it a few minutes to make sure they come online, and then you'll be able to go in and complete the configuration there. Also, be aware that you get a 30-day grace period at the expiration of any license or any device. So if you are setting them up, you've got a full 30 days ahead of time that you can set them up from your go live date, and you can still ensure that you have all of the licensing time due to you for that device. So with that in mind, also just be aware I'll be here to help you. I want to make sure that we can still give enough time to AV. Anybody who has questions that they haven't asked yet, feel free to ask questions on anything. And if we need to, I can stick around for a few minutes and make sure we answer those. So in looking at audio video over Ethernet, be aware we have our Pro AV design team. I won't beat this horse to death like I did with the Pro Wi-Fi design, just email them and they will help you design your network, especially for anything new or for your first couple of Netgear deployments. Please reach out. You could reach out on every single deployment and they won't mind at all. Just a quick overview, we do have a couple of switches. I did not have this slide the other day because this only came live yesterday, but our M4250 line is the line we expect you to use most of the time because it covers all of your gigabit devices, and then with 10 gig uplinks. We do also have our M4300 series that gives you gigabit and 10 gig and 40 gig. It also gives you redundant power supplies and the ability to have a redundant core to a network. We do see these more with commercial deployments or with deployments that are using 10 gig encoders and decoders. If you're doing that in the home, we will happily help you spec which switch, and Next Level will be happy to sell it to you. The M4350s are brand new, just launched at Infocom next week. They will not be available until late July. These will have more options for gigabit, 2.5 gig, 10 gig, 25 gig, and up to 100 gig uplinks. These are also made for redundant power supplies and active core, meaning you have multiple switches that are acting in a redundant fashion. We will see more commercial application for these with the possibility of some residential because there are models that will give you multi-gig and PoE. And then we also have our M4500 series, which goes from 10 gig to 100 gig. Again, very commercially minded for very large deployments. All of these switches, to get into the GUI, there are two different ways, and I wanted to cover that really quickly here. There is a port on all of our M4250s and 4300s and 4350s called an out-of-band port, or OOB. This has a static IP set at 192.168.0.239. So if you would like to, you can plug directly into that port, but if you are not on this kind of IP scheme, statically change your wired adapter and you will be just fine. If you would like assistance with how to do that, again, that's a training I'm happy to do. All of the other numbered ports are what we call in-band ports because they are the ports that actually connect everybody together. Those are set for DHCP, so if you're plugging into a network that has DHCP active, the switch will inherit whatever address it receives. But you'll see this address here is oddly reminiscent of what your Windows adapter runs into when it does not get a network address. So we do this on purpose. So when you take these out of the box, you can actually plug this directly into the wired adapter of your laptop or desktop. And if your device has a wireless card on it, you can be on the internet and connected to the switch at the same time. But because of that direct connection, that ad hoc network, neither your computer nor the switch get a network address from anything. And so your Windows PC will default to something on this subnet, the 169.254. So you can just go right into your browser, type in 169.254.100.100, and get logged into the GUI and set things up. Or if you don't care about network addresses, we'll also be showing you the Netgear Engage controller and how that makes it easy as well. So we will get logged into the switch here and show you what that looks like. You'll see you're presented with an option for an AV GUI and the main GUI. The main GUI is for IT configuration and just gives you all of the options. The AV GUI is a simplified GUI for AV networking. So if we log in, we can see here the switch at a glance. We'll see that there is one port being used to power something. We're also seeing that there's just simply another port logged in and connected. I'm going to make sure I don't configure either of those with a VLAN that would kick me off of the switch. That's important too. You'll see the options here. I can see that this is getting an address on because I'm connected to port 10 to the router. Sorry, I have the Engage software up over here, and it wants to dictate what happens there.
Hey, Fred, we covered this the other day. I just want to make sure everybody knows. But pretty device or manufacturer agnostic, where you guys work with pretty much any. You had a slide with seemed like hundreds of manufacturers that we work with, especially for AV over IP. Just want to make sure that's known to everybody out there.
Yes, and if you ever do need to look that up, just come to netgear.com. And I don't know why that came to this particular page, but netgear.com, AV Solutions, Commercial AV, and scroll down to View Our Partners, and there are over 200 companies that we are partnered with, and you'll be able to go through here and see all of them at a glance here. For the pages that they are on, they are all alphabetical. They just added this tiering system literally earlier this week. So if you're not seeing the company that you want to, just make sure you go through the pages. And we are always happy to help you figure out if we are partnered with that company. And the design team will always let you know how to configure those devices, even if they are not a partner with us today. So don't let that stop you. If we're not partnered with the company that you're using, still reach out to the design team. But the first thing that you always want to do with the switch is go to maintenance and make sure you are looking at the firmware that is being used. You will see there are two images on here for firmware. This is so that I can see that the 4.13 firmware is active. But if that firmware gave me a problem, I can go back to the other firmware that I had on that switch previously. And if you ever need to check the firmware version, just go to support.netgear.com, type in your model number of switch, and it will take you right to a page that will show you the latest firmware. In this case, I can see I'm using 4.13, so we are all set on this one. This is also the page where you can download the configuration or restore a configuration. So if you have a configuration that's fairly common for your deployments, you can create a template and then just apply that every time. The other big thing on this, though, is the network profile page. We have created templates for all of the most common types of protocols, things like Audio Dante or Audio AES67. Some of them are manufacturer specific, like Sonos. For basically any video encoder or decoder you are using, it's just a video profile. If you're doing anything with NDI cameras, be aware we have those as well. And the profiles up above for audio and video are assuming that you are isolating a VLAN for those. But if you are putting things like Dante Audio on the same VLAN as your video encoders and decoders, go ahead and use one of the converged templates. And if you're not sure which template to use, reach out to the Pro AV design team and they will let you know. If we want to set up one of these, I can choose what I want the profile to be. It's assuming I'm creating a new VLAN for that, so we'll go ahead and do that. You also assign it a color. If you need to, you can turn on layer 3 options and give the switch an IP address on that VLAN, or this is also where you can set up DHCP server. Just fill out those right there. And again, I am happy to help you learn all of the things that you would need to in order to do that. And then you pick the ports that you want to configure for that template, and it will apply those. Likewise, if I wanted to create another network for a video VLAN, I could do that as well. Again, it's going to assume that I'm isolating a new VLAN for that. We'll just give it another color to differentiate it and apply. And just like that, in seconds, I have configured a switch for 2 different VLANs, one of them using an audio solution, one of them using a video solution. It would be even easier if you had a completely isolated VLAN and you just wanted everything on VLAN 1. You could also just come here and change the template associated with that VLAN 1 and just plug it in. So if I wanted, say, just a video with Dante audio, I could do that and apply that as well. Now I'm connected over that particular template right now, so I'm not going to do that live on the call. Also, if you are using AVB, this is where you would come in and activate your AVB license. Again, if you're doing AVB, please reach out to the design team because that does change the design of the network. So make sure you call that out. In fact, it's always a good idea to let them know what devices you are connecting to the switch so that they can properly advise you on the template as well. Now, those profiles, just so that you can see just what happened there, I'm actually going to close this and open up our Engage software. This is something that is a free download, just netgear.com/engage. It has a few setup options for the site, and then it will act as a controller for your AV switches at that location. Right now, it is local only, but we are going to be expanding the capabilities of this and hope to have it on the cloud eventually here. I don't have a definitive timeline for that, but I have already onboarded my switch. Otherwise, it would show up down here. This is also where you can see the IP address if you don't want to go through any ARP tables or any other IP tables to try to figure out where your switch is. And if I click configure, it will take me right into that GUI again. If I don't just want that GUI though, I can also launch the main GUI or the CLI from this point as well. But just to show you kind of what this particular GUI looks like as well. Now, because I did not come in here because I didn't want to for all of the AV portions, just to show you what those templates are doing, if I come here to PTP TC, this was enabled and the Dante ports were added to that. Because we also created VLANs, I would need to come in here to the VLAN portion and I would need to tag those ports. But that was taken care of for us. I would also need to come in and enable different multicast settings for snooping and querying. Those have already been turned on for our respective VLANs, and we've even done something called IGMP+. We went over that a little more in detail the other day, but this is basically a combination of multicast settings that make multicast run flawlessly over your switches. We would also possibly need to come in here and address any of the port settings. There are some profiles that make changes to frame size and flow control. In this case, we did not need to. We also come in and affect the DSCP queue mapping for those different profiles. So all of those things are happening automatically for you just from being logged into the AV GUI. So please take advantage of that. And again, I am happy to help you with a one-on-one session in setting up your AV switching as well. Just please reach out to the design team so that we know the design has been vetted and they'll be able to let us know which profiles to use and we'll help you from there.
Thank you so much, Fred. And we have one more question here. We have a couple. I'm going to ask you this, and we're running short of time here. If you have a switch already configured on IP, could you still log into the switch with the, I guess that's out-of-box port IP?
Yes. I wouldn't log into both of them at the same time, but it just gives you multiple ways to log in. And the nice thing about the out-of-band port is you can see that with a lot of the profiles, you may be changing the VLAN associated with every port on that switch, and the out-of-band port will let you make any changes absolutely to this switch. But I mentioned earlier, I'm logged in through port 10. So if I changed the VLAN associated with port 10, it would kick me out of the switch. And so to make sure that you avoid kicking yourself out of the switch, you can log in initially on the numbered ports if you need to change the static IP associated with the out-of-band port. But I do highly recommend using the out-of-band port for configuration.
Well, thank you so much, Fred. I really appreciate your time. This has been super informative. I think the big thing to get out of this too is, you guys have put a lot of attention into this channel, and I want our customers, integrators to know that, you're not alone. There's a lot that you guys invested in design services and support. So definitely utilize and take advantage of the resources that Netgear has to offer, whether it's, building a new system, have any questions about the software. Fred's here to help, and they have a whole team that can answer your questions, 24/7. So I hope this was very useful for you guys. Again, we will have this on our website. We'll have this on our YouTube channel. We're going to have a new video gallery on our website, www.getnextlevel.com, and we will have this up there to utilize whenever you guys need it. So again, Fred, thank you so much for everything from Tuesday and today. Really appreciate you helping us out. And I have some questions we're going to go through and give away this access point offline. So again, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and we will talk to you soon.
And one last plug, please, if you would like a dedicated session with me, please reach out, and your next level rep will help you get that set up. So far, just in the last 3 months, I have trained over 230 people, of which I'm including you. And that did not occupy all of my time. So don't think that you are ever burdening anybody by reaching out and asking for that session. That is literally what I'm here to do. It's my job, and I am happy to do it. And the first thing that I want to make sure you're doing is getting started on the right foot, that you don't have to guess around with anything, and that you're not wasting time trying to figure out this equipment. Let's get you going and hitting the ground running, because again, our main focus is to make sure that you guys are profitable and making money, and that you're happy with the equipment that you're getting, and that we're your favorite manufacturer. So if I can help you do those things, let's do it.
Yeah, at least for the first few projects, and then, so you get your feet wet. So appreciate that so much, Fred. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody. And we will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.
Thanks.